PSA. This is the story of my first experience with DMT. All effects I describe are subjective, and what worked for me might not work for everyone else. I'm just trying to share an entertaining and informative experience. Please practice harm reduction. I'm not recommending this to anyone. I have made this post as detailed as possible while keeping it easy to understand. For the convenience of the reader, I have divided this report into the following parts: background, dosage, preparation, setting, intention, the trip, duration, and bummers. Background. I had gone into the mountains in early April in pursuit of the truth. I was lodged at this remote stay in an even remote village high up near the clouds. It started snowing heavily on the day I reached it and continued snowing for 3 more days. I have taken heroic doses of psychedelics such as LSD and psilocybin mushrooms multiple times, and I have a fair share of experiences with 2CB, mescaline, and LSA, etc. Dosage: 600 UG of LSD and 100 milligrams of DMT. Preparation. All my preparations was involuntary. It was just a happenance of my situation. However, I feel like these factors contributed to a good experience. I had abstained from solid food for about 8 hours before the trip, no FAP, and I also had been detoxing from my phone and social media for a few days. I spent my time mostly in silent introspection and meditation. I spent the past decade devoting myself to reading spirituality, philosophy, and psychology and gathering as much info about DMT as possible. Set. I had an enthusiastic mindset while approaching this compound. Although I was nervous in the beginning, my curiosity was at its peak. Overall, I had a positive mindset. I was sitting on a chair with beautiful snow-covered mountains peeking in front of me. It was a sunny afternoon and fresh snow was melting, creating a beautiful landscape. I was tripping on acid alone, although I was accompanied by the owner, Kenny, and manager, Stan, at the place where I was staying, who were very positive and comforting. As I started peeking on LSD, I sat in the sun, dissolving in the warmth that its rays provided me out of the constant snowfall and cold weather. Intention. I want to have a beautiful experience. I was sitting on my chair when I was asked to light up the joint of the DMT. The smoke didn't seem to hurt my throat and lungs at all. It was really easy to hold in. The joint was shared between Kenny, Stan, and me. It was soon finished and I could feel the trip coming on. Suddenly all the colors became super bright. It felt like I had reached another level of color perception which was previously impossible. Everything was shining very vividly. The trees in front of me started morphing and dancing and spinning in their place. I could hear them laughing and talking to everything. This is when I knew I was in for a wild ride. Suddenly I could feel gears moving throughout my body. I could breathe in more deeply than before. The colors were so bright that it was almost blinding. The atmosphere felt soothing and comforting as all the worries of the world just faded away from my mind. I felt completely naked, even though I was wearing a few layers of wool. It felt like the boundaries of my body had completely dissolved and the wind was blowing right through me. DMT had completely captured my attention. At this point, it seemed like layers of reality were peeling off, and I was able to perceive what lay behind this curtain veil of reality, ordinary consciousness. It felt like a very big update was being downloaded to my human brain. The sky became a superdome with clearly defined boundaries, and I saw gestures atop the mountain peaks. There were thousands of them, standing behind turntables and mixing records. There was a high-pitched frequency that I could hear. The gestures were making this music on their turntables, and they were rapidly increasing the frequency. It got so loud that I was unable to hear everything else. Time seemed to have sped up for me because now I was hyper aware of everything which was going on around me. Every passing second of normal time felt like hours of being bombarded with extremely beautiful cosmic and planetary sceneries. This is where I started to panic. The whole experience had gotten extremely intense, more intense and weird than anything else I've ever known. Thoughts, images, feelings, etc. were happening so fast that I felt like I could no longer keep up, and I was going insane. A clear thought formed in my mind. I am dying. I thought that I had came so far away from civilization. It was like a bunch of very strong psychedelics with people I had met only a few days ago. I had always wanted to push my limits, and throughout my past, I have sought to recreate near-death experience through these substances. But this time, I have done too much and I'm going to die, I thought. I had read about feeling like dying in various trip reports, but nonetheless, it seemed very real when it was happening in me. I accepted my death. I let it go. I surrendered. I said to it, "Take me with you. I want to get on this ride." From this moment, I could no longer differentiate between reality and hallucinations. I was completely lost in the experience. I had no sense of my body, my mind, my past, my history, my family, and in anything else. I was pure awareness, aware of everything which was visible and invisible, known and unknown, divine and devilish. I was still present in my body, and I could open my eyes when it was overwhelming, but my vision was bombarded with extremely beautiful hallucinations. I should also mention that throughout my experience, I was still the same person, which meant I was not extremely happy or sad or numb or confused or horny like the other drugs. I was still the same consciousness, but it felt like I was looking at ordinary reality in the same way it truly exists, but I had been brainwashed by my culture to ignore it throughout my life. I was seated on a chair and faced the mountains, but it felt like I was suddenly moving without actually moving. My whole body had a weird sensation of liftoff. The layers of melted snow created certain patterns which pulled me in towards it. I was sucked into those beautiful patterns which looked like God Gantia riding on an elephant. It transformed into cosmic sceneries of the universe, where I was floating, or rather falling, into the infinite space. I had the physical sensation of being crumpled up like a piece of paper and tossed into hyperspace at 1,000,000 miles per hour. But there was no fear because I believed that I was already dead, and now I'm in the afterlife. Futuristic tech and cyberpunk imagery was floating through my vision like a dam in a rainstorm I had broken apart. Some parts were very hard to explain using regular words here. I was conscious of my experience, but it was utterly weird and confusing and completely bizarre that English words would fail to translate the true meaning. I remember feeling a warm and loving embrace by the entire planet, and I was feeling like the final piece of a jigsaw puzzle was pushed inside. I felt the whole of my heart become full of love and compassion. The image was finally complete. Nothing left. Nothing was lost. Everything was regained. I was whole. I can only deduce that I was in the arms of Mama Aya, spirit of Ayachusa, and the glorious marvel of nature had manifested all of its history, and now I was a part of that experience. I was now in the waiting room. This is the stage before a breakdown where the user is transported to a hall-like or room-like place. I think this was the peak of my experience. I felt the presence of Shiva all over the place. I felt like I had been here before, but I had forgotten. Like this place exists somewhere within my reach within me, but like I was here before I was born, and where I would go once I eventually die, along with everyone and everything else. I suddenly saw a very alien-like person in between the cosmic beauty. It looked very similar to the figure in visionary artist Alex Gray's artwork in The Great Turn. Here, I was able to work through a lot of my personal traumas, and it was a period of intense healing for me spiritually and emotionally. It was in this waiting room where I stood facing the chemical spirit of LSD. It looked like a spinning and floating orb, radiating rainbow-colored energy. It told me that LSD's purpose in my life was fulfilled and there was nothing more that I can learn from it. All psychedelic compounds immediately led to DMT, the strongest known psychedelic. I opened my eyes during this experience and I saw huge globes of energy pulsating through the surface of the earth. I looked at my hands and my entire skin was completely tattooed and inked in sacred ancient mystical letters or something which seemed completely alien to anything I've seen. I could see the very energy of life running through my veins. On the ground nearby, I could see tunnels of energy merging and melting with each other. It felt like I was a tribal spirit that had lived on this planet of existence for thousands of years before, and it wasn't my first time here. I felt as if I had awakened myself to the perspective of my higher self. The more I kept my eyes open, the more shasamic I felt. Connected to every molecule in the air, every drop of water in the ocean, and every grain of sand on the land. I suddenly felt deep empathy for all human beings and animals who are born into this merciless universe. I suddenly felt deep empathy for all humans and animals who are born into this merciless universe. The trees seemed to morph once again, but now they had taken the appearance of goddess Pravarti. I was seeing the images of thousands of her all throughout the forest. I felt truly divine, blessed by the energy which flows through everyone and the whole of existence. I could finally hear the music of nature come alive in the calls of the birds and movements of the grass. The trickling water felt like a part of myself that I loved and cherished. Although I could open my eyes, it was very difficult to talk or even speak any words. Things were going too fast to put into words. I felt like I had been in the experience for a few weeks. Eventually, the visuals started slowly wearing off. Bodily sensations started to return. I started getting a little nauseous. Being back inside a body felt like a very new experience. Still bamboozled by this cosmic carnival, I looked over my shoulder and saw Kenny had opened his eyes and was sitting beside me. With as much courage and effort as I could muster, I asked him, "Is this what universe consciousness feels like?" He just smiled and exclaimed, "You're back." Tears of joy almost rained down my face. I had to hold them back. I felt so grateful to be alive and back into reality. I felt like I had been given another chance to live. I could hear the divine music as I sipped on tea while sitting in front of a fireplace smoking a joint. It had been an hour since my trip had ended. People around me were busy with their everyday chores. I was staring at the shadows because now I know where the magic flows. Duration. DMT flash lasted about 30 minutes. After about 1 hour of smoking it, I was completely sober. I took LSD approximately 2.5 hours before smoking the DMT. But after the DMT trip, the LSD had completely worn off. I was amazed to see how the duration of my LSD trip, which should have been around 20 hours, was overpowered and finished by DMT in 3 or 4 hours. Bummers. These are the things I was hoping would happen due to my mainstream hype, which did not happen. I was not immediately enlightened. I did not suddenly receive answers to all my life's problems. I do not feel superior to others for having this experience. Thanks for reading. Much love. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed today's story. Now, huge thanks to the Redditor u/AXD417 for uploading this to Reddit. I thank you so much. Now, this is very, very detailed. I appreciate the author who wrote this. Amazing job. This is probably by far one of my most favorite stories I've narrated. No joke. Hope you guys enjoyed today's story, and I will see you in the next video. So, don't forget to sit back, relax, and indulge in fear.